Ever feel like you're just wading through a dense fog of information, trying to get a clear picture of what actually needs doing and how?
Yeah, that feeling's pretty common.
You're definitely not alone. So today, we're diving deep into strategies for bringing clarity to complex work, really empowering teams to succeed.
Especially now, right? With
Yeah,
technologies like AI becoming so central.
exactly. We've been looking at some really insightful video presentations. They offer practical guidance on how teams can effectively, define and execute their work.
Hmm.
Our goal in this deep dive, it's basically to distill the essential approaches for achieving that clarity and fostering team success for you, especially when you're navigating, well, the evolving landscape of requirements and integrating new tools like artificial intelligence.
And what's really fascinating to see is the fundamental shift in how we even think about planning work.
Right.
Historically, the main idea was to meticulously define every single detail of a project up front. That classic waterfall approach.
The old way.
The thinking was, that exhaustive upfront planning would lead to predictable outcomes. Very controlled.
And that logic kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially for maybe more predictable kinds of projects, where the path forward is pretty clear.
Sure, if you know exactly what you're building.
You can map it all out,
Hmm.
estimate the costs, work towards that fixed endpoint.
Right.
But one of the videos we looked at really hit home on the significant opportunity cost of all that lengthy upfront planning today.
That's a great point, the opportunity cost.
Yeah, by opportunity cost, we mean like the value you lose by spending all that time and resources planning everything down to the last detail instead of maybe doing something else more valuable, like getting something out to customers faster.
Precisely. In today's world, things change so fast. Markets, technology, especially AI, it's advancing incredibly quickly.
Mhm.
Spending months nailing down every single requirement up front,
Yeah.
well, that window of opportunity might just slam shut before you even start building anything.
Right. By the time you finish the big plan, the market's moved on. Or maybe a competitor's already launched something.
Exactly. Customers are left waiting.
So nimbleness is key now, being able to adapt. Customers want value, and they want it reasonably quickly. And they expect it to meet their current needs, which might have changed a lot since you first thought of the project.
Definitely. But it's also important, as one presentation pointed out, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Upfront planning does still have its place for truly predictable work.
Sure, if it's something you've done a million times.
Exactly. If you've built that exact same thing countless times before, why wouldn't you leverage that existing knowledge? Makes sense.
So this really brings up a key question for you, listening in. How do you strike that balance? You need some planning, but you also need that agility to adapt.
And that's really where Agile comes into the picture. Agile emerged as a direct response to this changing nature of work, this need for adaptability. The core idea really is that the requirements and even the design of whatever you're building, they actually emerge and evolve during the implementation, not all decided beforehand.
Now, I can imagine for some people listening, that might sound a little unsettling, maybe even risky, not having everything locked down from day one.
It can feel that way initially, yeah. But the videos we watched explained how Agile manages this perceived risk. It's mainly through short cycles of work, iterations.
Oh, okay. Short bursts.
Precisely. Instead of one massive, long project, Agile breaks the work down into smaller, manageable chunks, often called iterations or sprints.
Right.
And at the end of each little cycle, you ideally have a potentially shippable piece of functionality, something tangible.
You can see progress quickly.
Yeah, and it allows for frequent check-ins, opportunities to get feedback and make adjustments as you go. But what's really key here is that Agile isn't about abandoning requirements in design. Not at all.
Okay, that's important.
It's about doing those things just in time, as close as possible to when that specific piece of functionality is actually being built by the team.
So you're using the latest info.
Exactly. It ensures the team is working with the most current, most relevant understanding of what's needed.
Which means instead of those often tedious status meetings you get in Waterfall where it's all about ticking boxes against a rigid plan, Agile meetings are more like working sessions.
Much more collaborative, yeah. They're where the team actively figures out the requirements for the next bit of work and decides the best way to actually build it.
That sounds way more productive for everyone involved, doesn't it? More engaging for you if you're on that team.
Absolutely. And this iterative way of working, it allows for constant adaptation. If the market shifts or you learn something new about what users really need,
You can pivot.
you can pivot. The team can adjust course much more easily than if they were chained to some massive, outdated upfront plan. It seriously reduces the risk of building the wrong thing.
Makes sense.
And to help manage this dynamic way of working, Agile often uses something called user stories.
User stories.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a term you hear a lot. But one of the presentations we watched did a great job clarifying what they are, and maybe just as importantly, what they aren't.
Good distinction.
It really emphasized that a user story isn't some huge, detailed specification document, not pages and pages.
No, definitely not.
Instead, it's more like a concise summary, a prompt for a conversation, like a placeholder almost.
That's a perfect way to put it. Think of it as an IOU for a discussion. That's crucial for you to understand.
An IOU for a chat. I like that.
And the standard format helps frame that chat. As a type of user, I want to do something so that I get some benefit.
The who, what, and why.
Exactly. That simple structure keeps the focus on the user, their goal, and critically, the value it provides them. Why are we even doing this?
And to make user stories more practical, the videos talked about the 3 C's: card, conversation, and confirmation. Let's break those down. First, the card. That refers to keeping the description short and sweet, right?
Spot on. Brief. To the point. Something that could literally fit on an index card or a sticky note, not a novel.
Keep it concise to fuel the talk.
Exactly. The card is just a reminder, capturing the core need and the outcome. It's deliberately not about getting lost in tiny details at this stage.
Okay.
Then comes the second C, conversation. And this is where the real magic happens. The real understanding gets built.
Right, the talking part.
The presentations really highlighted the value of team workshops. Getting the people who will actually do the work together to discuss, clarify, and elaborate on that user story card.
Which is a big shift from waterfall, isn't it? Where maybe just 1 or 2 people, like a business analyst, would read the requirements, often kind of in isolation.
A huge shift. By involving the whole implementation team in these conversations, you get so many more perspectives, different viewpoints, different expertise.
And hopefully a shared understanding.
A much more unified understanding of the work. And this discussion, it lets the team sort of mentally walk through it, think it through virtually, before anyone writes any code or starts building.
Like a dry run in their heads.
Precisely. Every team member brings their own skills to that conversation. Developers think about technical feasibility, testers think about edge cases, designers think about usability.
Everyone contributes.
Exactly. Then the final C is confirmation. This is about getting agreement, validating that shared understanding with the stakeholders, maybe even the end users.
Making sure everyone's aligned.
Yeah, ensuring everyone's on the same page about what's going to be built and how it actually delivers that value we talked about.
So it's like a handshake, a mutual agreement. We all understand the goal. And it's worth remembering, as the videos mentioned, user stories are the main thing. But other documents can still exist, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. User stories aren't meant to replace all documentation. They just centralize that initial conversation and give a clear starting point. You might still have diagrams, mock-ups, other details alongside them.
Got it.
Now, what's really insightful for you, listening, is thinking about how this whole approach fosters a real sense of team ownership.
Yeah. That came up a lot.
Because the team is so involved in defining the work through these conversations, they naturally feel more engaged. There's more collaboration, more ownership, and ultimately more accountability.
It's not just being handed a list of instructions.
Exactly. It moves away from that order-taker mentality you sometimes see in waterfall projects.
Right. When the team feels they have a real say in shaping the work, it becomes, well, like one video said, it becomes their baby.
Yeah, and that leads to way more pride and responsibility in the final outcome. Now, the videos were realistic. They acknowledged that sometimes teams might resist this at first.
Why's that? Sounds better.
Well, initially it might feel like more work, right? If you're used to just being told what to build, suddenly being involved in defining it can seem like an extra burden.
Okay. That initial hurdle.
It's a natural reaction. But what typically happens is, as teams actually experience the empowerment that comes with owning their work, having that direct influence, that perception changes.
You see the benefit.
They feel the benefits. And a really crucial point that came up repeatedly was respecting the team's decision on how to implement the work.
The how belongs to the team.
Yes. Whoever is defining the what and the why, maybe the product owner, they need to resist the urge to dictate the technical specifics. Micromanaging the how just disengages the team.
Undermines that ownership we just talked about.
Completely. The user story gives the who, what, and why, the how, the technical solution. That's where the team's expertise shines. It's their plan. respect that.
Makes total sense.
And building on this, another key idea from the videos was slicing the work, breaking it down into small, independent pieces.
Right. The user stories themselves should be small.
Ideally, yes. Each user story should represent a small slice of work that delivers some complete bit of functionality, something you could, in theory, deploy to users right away.
Even if you choose not to release every single tiny piece immediately.
Exactly. And this approach tackles that challenge of breaking down really complex work. It lets you deliver tangible value to customers early and often.
Instead of the big bang release months later.
Precisely. The videos even mentioned using interim solutions sometimes, maybe call it throwaway work, though that sounds a bit harsh.
Yeah, throwaway sounds wasteful.
Maybe learning prototype is better. The point is you build something simpler first to provide early value and get crucial feedback, even while the final, more polished solution is still being developed.
Okay, I see. So building something you know you'll replace later might seem odd, but the upside is.
Huge upside. Early customer feedback, validating your assumptions, maybe even generating some early revenue. It de-risks the whole thing.
And the rule of thumb mentioned was, what, like 1 or 2 days work for a story?
Yeah, roughly. That's a common guideline. Small enough to get done quickly, but big enough to deliver some kind of incremental value to the user.
And because it's iterative.
Because it's iterative, that understanding deepens as you go. So user stories aren't set in stone. They get refined, split into smaller stories, maybe reworked entirely, or sometimes you just realize they're not needed anymore and remove them.
That flexibility seems like a massive strength compared to being locked into those rigid upfront requirements.
It really is. Which brings us back to communication. All of this hinges on clear, effective communication.
Definitely.
And one video really zoomed in on active listening, specifically the echo back technique, calling it essential, especially for agile work and anything involving complex stuff like AI.
Echo back. Right.
Yeah.
To stop misunderstandings before they happen, can you quickly remind us how that works?
Sure. It's simple but powerful. Someone finishes speaking, you pause, just briefly process it. Then you start with something like, okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly,
Paraphrase it back.
paraphrase their message in your own words. Then, critically, you check. Have I got that right, or is that what you meant?
Simple 3 steps. Listen, paraphrase, confirm.
Exactly. It seems so basic, but it catches so many potential miscommunications. Invaluable for you when things get complex.
I can see that. And sticking with improvement, the videos also hammered home the importance of feedback loops, that cycle. Input, reflection, action.
Absolutely. Feedback loops are basically the engine driving improvement for human teams and for AI systems, too.
How so?
Well, they let us learn from experience, right? See what's working, change what isn't. The presentations talked about positive feedback, reinforcing good stuff, and negative feedback, helping correct course.
Okay.
And also natural feedback loops versus ones we deliberately design into our process.
And they mentioned the plan-do trap. What was that?
Yeah, the plan-do trap. That's where teams get stuck just planning and doing, and they forget the crucial next steps. Check evaluating the results and actually making changes based on what they learned.
So you need the full cycle. Plan, do, check, act.
You need the full PDCA cycle for continuous improvement. And the videos contrasted how feedback is often viewed differently. In waterfall projects, feedback can feel like a disruption to the precious plan.
An annoyance, almost.
Pretty much. Whereas in Agile, feedback is seen as absolutely essential. It's data. It's vital for discovery, for learning, for making sure you're still heading in the right direction.
Course correction fuel.
Exactly. And Agile has built-in mechanisms for this, like retrospectives after each iteration. The team stops, reflects, what went well, what didn't, what should we change next time?
And the daily check-ins, too.
And the daily check-ins, yeah, quick sync-ups. But underpinning all of this, as the presentation stressed, is psychological safety.
Meaning?
Creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up, to give and receive feedback honestly without fear of blame or punishment. That's critical.
Absolutely. Otherwise, feedback loops don't really work.
They break down. And it's just fascinating how fundamental feedback is for AI too, isn't it? Videos gave great examples. Like what?
AI training cycles are all about feedback. Showing the AI examples, correcting its mistakes. Think about KPCHAs. You're literally providing feedback to train image recognition AI. Speech recognition learns from corrections. Recommender systems learn from what you click on.
So feedback is how AI learns and gets better.
Fundamentally, yes. User feedback is gold for improving AI systems, which neatly connects to this set of principles for successful AI transformations that one video highlighted: context, mindfulness, respect, and trust. The 4 pillars.
Okay, the 4 pillars. How do user stories and Agile fit in?
Well, think about it. Context. That shared understanding you build through those user story conversations and mapping exercises, that's context.
Right.
Mindfulness. Encouraging the team to think about the bigger picture, the user impact during planning. Respect. Centering the work on real user needs, valuing everyone's input.
And trust.
Trust grows through the transparency of the process, working together openly to solve problems. User stories and agile practices naturally reinforce all 4 pillars. And user story mapping, which another video covered, can visualize the whole journey, making those pillars even stronger.
Exactly. Mapping helps everyone see the context, be mindful of the user experience, show respect for the user's goals, and build trust through that shared visual plan. It all ties together.
Wow, okay. So let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot. The big shift from rigid upfront planning.
To the more adaptive, iterative, agile approach.
Yeah.
Definitely.
The power of user stories, not as specs, but as conversation starters. Those 3 Cs.
Card, conversation, confirmation, and the huge benefits of team ownership, engagement, accountability.
Yeah, letting the team own the how. Plus, slicing work small, delivering value incrementally, maybe even using those interim solutions.
Getting value out sooner, and then the crucial soft skills active listening, like the echo back technique and building strong feedback loops.
Essential for complex work and especially relevant with AI.
Absolutely fundamental for both teams and AI development.
So by embracing these ideas, you, our listener, can hopefully bring more clarity to your own work, build stronger collaboration, and, well, ultimately get better results, especially as AI becomes more integrated into everything.
Which leads us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on. How could you take just 1 or 2 of these ideas we've discussed?
Just one small step.
Yeah. Maybe consciously try the echo back technique in your next meeting. Or think about how you could break down one complex task you have into smaller pieces that deliver value sooner. How could you apply something from this in your own world?
That's a great takeaway challenge. And hey, if you want to dive even deeper into any of this, see more examples.
Get more detail.
We definitely encourage you to check out the source video presentations. Just click on the thumbnails or the links you'll find in the description below.
They're really worth exploring further.